Welcome back. Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics reports a 40% food inflation rate, making essential commodities unaffordable for millions. However, the Minister of Agriculture, Abubakar Kyari, assures that the government has measures in place to address the situation. Kyari expects a bumper harvest in October-November 2024, which should increase food production. He attributes current shortages to seasonal reasons, reduced landmass, flooding, insecurity, and an aging farming population.
To boost mechanized farming, the government is distributing fertilizers and purchasing tractors. Kyari has ordered 200 tractors and 9,000 implements from Belarus to replace traditional farming tools like hoes. This was also referenced in the president's nationwide address on the 4th of August on Sunday. Joining us this morning is the managing director of BO Farms, Omotunde Banjoko. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, sir.
All right. Would you say that you're excited by the measures that have been announced, the equipment and the new measures that will be taken to improve the agricultural sector? Is this something that you're excited about?
Yes, it's a good initiative and it's a welcome development. Equipment being ordered from Belarus, USA, and Brazil. And the number, of course, the number from Belarus is very small. 200 tractors is not a number when we talk about the land mass of what we are doing in Nigeria. But however, maybe my concern as a farmer would be this thing didn't start with this current government. They deal with Brazil, started far back 2018 with the Green Imperative Project, when the government has been talking about bringing equipment in partnership with Brazil, assembling some of them in Nigeria. And for 4 years, you've not seen it. So that puts you in a position as a farmer to say, how real is this initiative? But like the president assured on Sunday, that he can confirm that the equipment are on the way. So that's an exciting information, and we'll take him by his words. Maybe in the next few weeks, some of those equipment will start arriving in Nigeria, and that will really change our dynamics. And like the minister said, we should have gone from oars to mechanized now, because even with the oars, with the few tractors we have, it's a pity. I can tell you authoritatively, there are some states in this country that can't even get a tractor. The state doesn't even have one, and the state even have to rely on third parties hiring equipment for them, and that has really set us back. Yeah, that has really set us back. If we still have to, and we still pride in something that is very funny. We still talk about 80% of our food coming from smallholder farmers who rely on hoes and cutlasses to do 1 acre, 2 acres for us to aggregate substantial quantity, which is also what led us to where we are. We have about 84 million hectares. We are cultivating just about half of that to food production.
What would you say? Because you're a farmer, so what would you say Nigeria is greatly lacking in the agricultural value chain with regards where we are now, where we could possibly be, and the real experience that you have on the field?
Okay. Where we are now and where we can be, like I mentioned, we have 84 million hectares. We are doing below 40 million, so we can be at 84 million.
Yes.
Meaning we can actually cultivate enough for ourselves and to export.
Yes.
So that's, and we have the ground, we have the landmass. And we also have the expertise. We have guys in the industry who are willing to work and ready to work, educated and enlightened, well-trained globally. So we have the manpower as well. But it's not enough to have the manpower, the equipment, like the one we mentioned earlier on. I was granting an interview some days back, and I was talking about the same equipment, that what we've seen before now, the few that government did, even at state level, at times, when you see some of those equipment getting into the country, who do they give those equipment to? They are used for empowerment by politicians. Yeah. You understand? Now the equipment comes into the country, you give them to senators to say, go and give it to your constituency. Constituency means everybody in that geopolitical zone, but now you now turn it to a party affair, giving it to your party members. Now you give a tractor to a barber, you give a tractor to an Okada rider. You do some lotteries and you ask them to come and win lotteries. They win the tractors. Now they have to probably sell to whoever they want to sell to, or some even just so. We're talking about now that to now get to where we should get to, this equipment should be going to the right people at the right times. Of course, it has to be paid for. I'm not saying it should be given out for free, but maybe under a good and perfect lease system, maybe a long-term 5-6 years repayment period, maybe with moratorium, single digit and stuff like that. So if we are looking in those directions, then we can start changing the narratives. Then, of course, when we are talking about how did we get here, we've had some very bad experience with flood, even as a country, losing several hectares of our farmland. We had 2 major ones in the last few years, one in 2012, one in 2022, losing several landmass. And how many people have recovered from it? I think that of 2022 was valued at over 700 billion that was lost in that alone. So you talk about what have we done to get those people back into business?
Right.
What have we also done to get those landmass that we lost in such a state that they can still be used?
Okay. So when we talk about we've talked about the challenges of flooding and getting these people back into the system.
The funding.
Let's also talk about the policies that the current administration have embarked on. Now, one of the policies recently, I think some weeks back, it was announced. Nigeria announced the policy that would allow for importation of food for 150 days. They were taking tariff of certain food items. Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the Africa Development Bank, said that this would cripple the agricultural sector. Is that a position that you agree with?
That's my position, and I also wrote about it the same way. It's my position because you don't use some temporary measures to discourage those other guys. You've asked us to go back to the farm. People have gotten loans, for example, to do some of these internal operations. So imagine if somebody has gone to take loan to do this operation, and at the time is to harvest and to sell, his landing cost in the market is higher than the ones that they've imported into the country. Then what would the guy be doing? One, they will either, if it's something you can store, you either store to wait for when the prices will be fair enough, or you might have to sell and be discouraged from going back to your operation. So if we are just addressing the issue of importation, what about the guys that have gone to the farm to use those expensive 30-40% to produce? And I'm one of those guys also. You've gotten your hand burnt using loans if needed to produce. And by the time the imported ones are coming in, it might and it will be cheaper. So I think while it's a good initiative, we should have also addressed the other aspect of the equation, which is those of you that have gone ahead to produce, how can we also make you competitive in the market? Because if we are coming to the same market, I'm to sell at 10 naira, is to sell at 8 naira. Nobody is going to patronize me, no matter what I preach. People are price sensitive in this part of the country. So those are some of the issues I think the policy, but the intent of the policy is good to bring in enough. But those are temporary measures.
But you mentioned earlier that Nigeria is currently producing enough to be able to feed itself.
I said we can't produce. We can't produce.
Okay, not
enough.
that we are producing.
No, we are not.
Okay, so what measures
produce.
would then, if you see the spirit behind that policy, but you see that it can also discourage local producers, local production. What temporary measures could the government maybe have implemented, or are there any temporary measures that they've implemented that you think are favorable?
What they could have done is, while addressing the issue of importation, you could also have found a way to discount those that are producing internally.
So like a subsidy of some sort?
Like a subsidy, kind of. Maybe it could be in terms of fertilizers, could be in terms of maybe the herbicides we are using. For those who need funding, are you able to push the right funding to them? So that, it will be a very good market and competitive.
Do we still have challenges with insecurity across the country? And that's why I was asking about the value chain. I'm talking about storage facilities, silos. We're talking, road transportation enough to move goods from farm to, to the market, electricity, security challenges. So when the minister says there's going to be a bumper harvest, in October, November, with these factors in place, is that realistic?
I'm not as optimistic as the minister, because you ask yourself, bumper harvest of what commodity? Bumper harvest is an ambiguous word. At the moment, we have some harvests, and I can confirm to you we operate a seasonal kind of operations in Nigeria, farming. So at the moment, some people have started harvesting their maize. And recently, in the last few days, the price of maize came down per ton slightly. But I'm not sure it's sustainable because it's just because people are harvesting, and that might not reflect in the markets. It might not, because why will it not also reflect if I've been selling at a loss in the past 4 or 5 months and I have opportunity to cover a bit of my books? I might not adjust my numbers immediately. So that's one. Then bumper harvest of what commodity, like I said, is it maize? Is it soya beans? Is it cassava? So we must know what are we talking about when we say bumper harvest. Then should we still be talking about seasonal farming in Nigeria with all our river basin? We have about 11 of them. Yeah. And sometimes last year, July, when the president was giving the order, they said those 11 basins will be activated so people can do all year farming. But to the best of my knowledge, that has not been done. So those are the areas we should be looking at. And insecurity is still a major challenge. A major challenge. People are still paying, I think between November 2020 and November 2023 that we have the figure, farmers paid about 124 million as tax to, Boko Haram and the likes for them to be able to go to their farm.
124 million
about 124
in the whole year?
Million naira. No, in those 3 years.
Only
in
3
just
years.
In the, about just 3 states in the country. Not.
How much does e-farmer pay?
No, it varies. You
Okay.
know, these are small, older farmers. So we are talking about just 3 states. I'm not talking. And then if you look at what we had lost in terms of projects, it's over 21 trillion. About 12 trillion projects that have been abandoned because of insecurity. I think from 2012 to 2021. So it's still a major challenge. We still see a lot of communities where farmers can go to the farm. And as long as farmers can go to the farm, our numbers. So I think we should be addressing the root issues if we really want to reverse the trend of this food inflation that we are witnessing. As at this time last year, we were still battling when we were seeing 22, 23% this time last year.
Yeah.
But now we are battling with 40%. We are not even sure if it will go down, it will still be rising.
All right. So wishful thinking, according to you from the Minister. Omotunde Banjoku, thank you very much for joining us. And of course, we wish you a bumper harvest.
Amen.
That's a very...
All right.
Amen.